Hey, it's Bill DeWeese. Welcome back to another voiceover-related video. Welcome to the channel. If you're brand new, make sure you subscribe and share. Hit that bell so that you get any reminders of new content that is released. And thanks for being here. Now, if you're just getting involved in voiceover, it's like when you start any new kind of job or you land in the middle of any new kind of environment, you're hearing terminology, verbiage that sounds like a new language, because you're talking about concepts that you're not familiar with yet. And it's no different in voiceover. You can feel really lost at first because there's a lot of acronyms and terms and words being thrown around that don't make sense yet, but will to you very soon. Now, what I've done is I've put together a list of some of the more popular terms that are used when it comes to voiceover. So this terminology will help you become a little bit more familiar with what's going on, help you better understand. And here's the thing. Don't expect, number one, that this will be a comprehensive list of every possible term that you'll encounter in voiceover, because it won't be. It'd be impossible for me to make that kind of video. Frankly, I've been doing this for a long time, and I occasionally find terms that are being used by people, in pockets over here, over there, that I'm not familiar with. And, I work with a global audience, as will you in voiceover. So a term they might use in the UK might be a little different than a term that's used in Spain or in China versus Mexico versus the U.S. versus West Coast versus East Coast. I'm not saying it's a completely different language, but I'm saying there might be some particular terms that pop up here or there. But this is a core group of terms that will help you better understand and make you feel more comfortable. And let me also just say this other thing. Never be embarrassed or ashamed to ask questions. And I understand when you're first getting started with something, you don't want to look stupid. Well, the only thing that will make you look not so smart is if you don't ask questions when you need to ask questions, because it looks like you're trying to protect your ego. So don't worry about it, because believe me, the people that you work with, the clients, the agents, the folks you're working with, they want you to be successful too. So if you don't know, don't be afraid to ask. So I'm just going to go through pretty quickly a long list of terms that you're likely to encounter during your voiceover career. Are you ready? All right, here we go. First of all, condenser, USB, and shotgun microphones. Okay, very briefly, condenser microphones are microphones like this. This is a Neumann TLM103, which has a capsule that you can see if you look carefully. Maybe not so much in the video, but if you see one in real life, it has a little small round capsule that captures the vibration of the voice, and it has to be powered by a preamp. A USB microphone, on the other hand, uses a USB cord that plugs directly into your computer, and so it does not have to be powered by a preamp. A shotgun microphone is a long, I don't want to say pencil because it's typically thicker than a pencil, but it might be the width of a dime and is longer. Sometimes they're about that long, sometimes they're about that long. And again, the diaphragm in that microphone is about the size of a dime, and the purpose for it is to be very directional so you don't get a lot of extra sound or noise. Originally popular with videographers, and now they're used by a lot of voiceover talent as well. What is a DAW or DAW? It is a digital audio workstation. Well, what's that? Well, that's simply a program that you record your voice into, such as Adobe Audition or Audacity or Pro Tools or Reaper, or I could go on and on and on. P2P. That's an acronym for pay to play, which is referring to online platforms that you pay for the privilege to be on and to get access to auditions and potential work. Platforms like voices.com, voice123.com, thevoicerealm.com, and again, on and on I could go with that. What is the difference between narration and commercial? Because you hear those terms used a lot in relationship to demos specifically. But also, jobs, broadly speaking, can be broken down into narration and commercial. I mean, you've got audiobooks, but audiobook is even narration, because narration is essentially anything that's longer form. If it's longer than 30 or 60 seconds, I typically group it into the category of narration. Whereas commercials are something that's promotional in nature. They tend to be 15, 20, 30, 60 seconds long. You could technically even say that many explainer videos, which go 1.5 to 3 minutes or so, could be a commercial because it's promotional in nature. So there are a lot of blurred lines when it comes to narration and commercial. What is an audio engineer? Well, an audio engineer is a professional that understands the inner workings of audio and audio equipment and recording. And when you're doing a session, for instance, over Source Connect, there's another term for you. Source Connect is a software program that you can purchase or lease that allows you to send your voice through your computer and the internet to a remote location where an audio engineer can record it for you. So if you're working with an audio engineer, it simply means that that person, that man or woman, is in charge of recording your voice on the other end in their location, wherever they may be located. It may be across the street, across town, across the country, or literally around the world. The other day, I did a session. It was an IKEA commercial where the director was in Italy. The audio engineer was in the UK, so it was being recorded. I was speaking here in my studio in the US. It was being recorded in the UK, being directed by a director in Italy. So with the internet, again, it kind of blurs all the lines. But that's what an audio engineer is. The acronym TOV, tone of voice. So a casting director or client may say, please read this in the TOV, or the tone of voice of a young adult, male, female, excited, energetic, or whatever the case may be, but they'll give you the tone that they would like the voice to be recorded in. Here's another one, the term 3 in a row. If someone a client ever says, give me 3 in a row on that line, it means they want you to read that line 3 times in a row, back to back, but different each time. Maybe giving slight emphasis on this word, next time on that word, or just so they have 3 options to choose from is the reason that they would ask for 3 in a row. If you're asked to billboard something, it means to give that particular line, phrase, or word more emphasis. Can you billboard this phrase for me? Whatever that phrase is, that means give it more love, more attention, make it stand out from the rest of the script. If somebody makes reference to a buyout, we'd like you to record this commercial. It is a buyout. It means when you get paid that they own the content and can use it in perpetuity, which means essentially forever perpetuity. So if something's bought out, you can't go back 6 months or a year later and ask for more money. They own it and they can use it as much as they want for as long as they want. The term cattle call, especially when you're first getting started in voiceover, you hear that word a lot. Cattle call, it's usually attached to the word audition, which means it's kind of come one, come all. It's not a specific, somebody hasn't hand-selected you for the audition. They're throwing it out there. And it could be they're allowing 50 people, 100 people, or thousands of people audition. It is a cattle call. The client doesn't know you, they haven't asked for you, but you're competing against everybody else who's throwing their voice into the ring, as it were. A couple of technical type terms that you should be familiar with. Compression. When you hear compression used in relation to recording, it's when it's software or hardware that essentially takes the audio signal, your voice, your audio, and squeezes it. It compresses it to varying degrees that you decide. For the purpose of it, does a few things. It gives it punch and clarity, makes it pop out a little more, and it also tends to level it out, the volume, a little bit. Depending on the type of compression you use, it can vary. But generally speaking, it tends to take kind of those spikes and smash it down a little bit and makes it a little more level. Now, it's not a hard limiter. We won't even get into that. But it's very common to use compression, at least a little bit of compression in audio. Another term you'll hear used often in the same sentence with compression is equalization, or EQ. EQ is referring to software or hardware that has the ability to isolate certain frequencies, high, medium, low, and all that. There's so many frequencies in your voice. And with equalization, you can emphasize and de-emphasize certain frequencies to get the sound of the voice that you want or that the engineer wants. A creative director. When you hear somebody referred to as a creative director, take note, because that person typically is your target audience. This is the person that has final say, or at least a lot of say, in who gets hired for the job. They tend to supervise all the creative people in an agency, or a marketing firm, they have great influence on who's chosen. So creative directors are people that you want to make happy in your marketing and in your auditioning. If somebody asks for a custom demo, what they're asking for is for you to read their script. In other words, they're not asking you to send them your commercial demo or your narration demo. They want to send you a script and have you read it for them. So think of it as a private audition. That's a custom demo. If somebody says that you have too much sibilance, that's a bad thing. Sibilance is an over-expression, overemphasized S. So when you hear S's referred to as sizzling or frying, that tends, some people speak with natural sibilance and it just kind of, it cuts through. Some people not so much. But sibilance is not desirable when it comes to voiceover. And sibilance can be taken care of through equalization, where those unwanted frequencies can be pulled down or eliminated, or oftentimes through a little software plugin called a de-esser, which essentially is an EQ, but engineered to specifically isolate the frequencies of the sibilance that are not wanted. Now, be careful when de-essing, because if you over de-ess, you take out too much of the S, you end up sounding as if you have a lisp. It just takes the S out completely, and you don't want that. So use your ear to make that determination. What is a noise floor? The noise floor think of it as environmental noise or sound. And when I'm sitting in my studio, and if I'm not talking, the noise floor is going to be the level that the sound of my room makes, also referred to as room tone. Room tone is the sound of a room when it's empty. Believe it or not, every room has noise. There is no such thing as a completely silent space unless it's engineered for that purpose. There's one or two studios in the world. There's one I know I think in Minnesota, that's engineered to virtually eliminate all sound, which is it's a very uncomfortable feeling for a human being to be exposed to no sound for long periods of time. I won't get into all of that. But the noise floor, when people refer to your noise floor is too high. It means there's too much room tone. It could be the HVAC, your air conditioner, or your heater running in the background. It could be cars and trucks going by on the outside of your house. But could be CNN playing in the background. So when they talk about noise floor and room tone, we're talking about the quietness or lack of within your studio environment. When they talk about gain, give me more gain, or I need less gain, essentially talking about volume, the signal, meaning your voice that's being sent into the recording software or to the engineer on the other side through Source Connect or the phone patch, or not the amount of it, if they want more or they want less. For instance, the other day I was doing a session. The engineer, it was over Source Connect. The engineer said, "Can you give me a few decibels more of gain?" And that just meant turning up my volume, essentially, the volume of my voice that he gets. Source Connect, I mentioned that, and I did make reference to Phone Patch. Phone Patch is simply the capability of being able to operate over a telephone line with a client so they can hear what you're doing, and you can hear them as you read so they can direct you. Years ago, you would have needed an actual telephone to do this. Nowadays, it's a little different. I personally use Skype. You could use Google Phone, anything that's digital, the software in nature that you can use. Skype is just easy. It's built in as a function. So if I have a phone patch with a client, I call them through Skype. I just bring up the little dial pad and I dial them up and we're good. It's easy and it's extremely cheap to do. IVR, interactive voice response. When somebody talks about IVR, it doesn't necessarily mean an on-hold message for telephone, but it is telephony. It's telephone related. But it's, when you're on the line and let's say, for instance, you're calling a bank. I don't know if people do this anymore, but you used to be able to call the bank to get your balance and such. That's IVR because it recognizes what you say or what you punch in to the keypad, and it can give you back the information that you need. So that is IVR. Your audio level is when you watch that little, it's either a lighted meter or it's a needle meter that shows you how loud essentially your voice is. So when they say, give me a level, you're doing a session, they want you to read so they can hear if your levels are too high or too hot, high or hot, same thing, or too low. And of course, they're going to want it peaking somewhere below 0, around -3 dB on their end. So that is a level. Two other things I want to mention. One is line reading. If you're ever working with a client and they want to give you a line reading, what they're going to do is they're going to read you the line the way they want you to read it back to them. So it leaves nothing to guesswork. They may have you do some reads where you're giving your interpretation. Now they'll say, okay, I want you to read it like this. And they'll read the line, and then you read it back using the same tone, pacing, emotion, and inflection. That is line reading. And then finally, I'll mention Watermark. Watermark. It's simply, if you're looking at like a graphic with a watermark, it's where the company who created it may put their logo on it, where it's kind of faint in the background so that you can't use it without paying for it. Same thing with audio. It's putting some sort of an audio mark within the audio so that it can't be used. I personally never use an audio mark or watermark in my auditions because the client wants to be able to hear what your voice sounds like put to their music, put to their video, and a watermark can be extremely distracting, and it can keep you from getting the job. Do you take a chance that somebody's going to rip you off and use your voice without paying? Yeah, I suppose, but is it really worth it? I like to play offense, not defense. And if you're always trying to protect yourself, you'll never make any progress. So that's the way I do it. That's the way I recommend doing it. So again, this is by no means an exhaustive list of every term that you'll come across, but these are some of the more commonly used terms that will help you feel hopefully a little more confident as you strike out in voiceover. And I'll be talking more about different terms and diving more deeply into these in future videos. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking it out. I hope you'll take a minute to look at my resources below in the description. I've outlined some people and places and services that I believe are offering really good stuff and help and support to voiceover talent. And I highly recommend that you check it out. Thanks again for being here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and I'll be back soon with another great video. We'll talk to you then.